Welcome to First Time for Everything, a podcast for curious people. I'm your host, Danny Elliott. I've toured the world as a backing vocalist for some of the biggest names in music, owned a prop rental business, ran a vintage boutique out of a camper I renovated, and have had a lot of firsts in my life. I created this podcast in hopes of inspiring you to take a chance on something you've been wanting to try for the first time. We're going to discover a lot of cool stuff together, and I'm so happy you're here. Hello, first timers. You do not have to be a musician to appreciate today's episode. I think any freelancer will get a lot out of this one. Today I'm talking with the incomparable Stevvi Alexander. Stevvi is one of the most well-respected working singers in the music industry and has sung with everyone from Fleetwood Mac to Britney Spears, touring the world and doing session work for countless TV and film projects, and was featured in the Oscar-winning documentary 20 Feet From Stardom, a film about the lives of backing singers. I met Stevvi about 15 years ago when I answered a backing singer casting call on Craigslist, back when Craigslist wasn't quite as sketchy as it is now. But answering that ad was one of the most pivotal moments of my life, not just professionally, as I would not have the career I've had in music without Stevvi, but also personally, as Stevvi has become one of my most treasured friends and actually officiated my wedding. So today we're talking about the ability to pivot, making your skill set invaluable, and having gratitude for being able to do what you love, and hell, gratitude for being able to work, period. This is First Time Surviving the Pandemic as a Singer. All right, today on the podcast, we have the one, the only, my friend, my mentor, my wedding officiant, Stevvi Alexander.
How goes Miles?
Yes, what's
Hi,
good, girl? I'm so happy. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you were down to do it. We had initially talked about doing this episode about, first time doing a world tour because you're such a well-traveled musician. But then the more we started talking, we were like, you know what? There's some more meat on the bones of this. Like, let's actually go deeper. We're going to talk about first time surviving a pandemic as a musician because that shit was rough. So
now you've already answered one of my questions, which is we can curse on here.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that button gets clicked not for children every time I publish. So
Love it.
yes.
Okay, I'm here for that.
I love it. Well, tell us about yourself firstly, so we just give the people some context for who you are, what you do.
Sure. First off, I just want to say again, thank you so much for having me. I'm just so excited and honored, and I'm loving getting to spend this time with you because we've been a little up across the country from each other for a minute.
Yes, for
But
too long.
now we're like within 15 miles of each other, and it's so fun. So,
I love it. You're gonna get sick of me, so that's fine.
possible. But okay, so let's see. I call myself a working singer, a professional singer. I would say I probably started in this game as an artist, but it's landed in a very nice place that I'm very happy with. And, when you say working singer to people, like their eyes kind of glaze over, parents, teachers, everybody's like, what does that mean?
Mm.
Because it's very hard to kind of wrap your head around, but there is actually a community of people who make their living singing with artists who sing for commercial jingles on film and television, shows and movies, and just for hire studio sessions for people's albums. So that is how I spend my days. And I've been really blessed. I've been doing it for a long time. No, I'm proud of it. I've pretty much been doing it professionally since like 97, 98, somewhere in there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you're extremely good at it. I don't know that I know the answer to this question, but what was your very first gig?
So that's kind of a funny sort of could go a couple different ways
Sure.
but really my very first like gig with an artist, I would say probably was with Diana Ross.
Oh my gosh, amazing. I didn't know this. Queen.
I know. I know. It's kind of insane. Yeah, it's a long story. I'll make it very, very succinct. But during college, I was in like all the girl groups, right? 90s. So like there are a
Love it.
million girl groups.
Yes.
One of my girl groups got a record deal with Columbia. And then our A&R guy got his card pulled for like some tricky money stuff. And then the new regime came in, so they dropped us from the roster. So we're floating around, and we met with Jimmy Iovine and all these different labels who were like, "Yeah, we're into it, whatever." Diana Ross met with us, and she's like, "I'm starting a label, and I want to sign you." And I was just like, "Cool, all right, let's do it." Went to her house and everything in like Brentwood. It was amazing.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
at a certain point, she was like, "Oh, my label's not going to be ready for a while, but I want you, specifically me, out of it was a three-girl group. For some reason, out of the three girls, she's like, I want you to come on tour with me." And I was like, okay. So I was finishing a business degree in college. I was getting my undergrad degree. And as it happened, her tour conflicted with my graduation ceremony. Here I am, I go to my mom and dad and I'm like, I think I'm gonna forego my ceremony. I'm still getting the degree, but I think I'm gonna forego my ceremony because I'm gonna go to Europe with Diana Ross.
Hell yeah.
And that was that. The rest is history.
I love That's so amazing. That must have been so cool.
It was fun. I think the funnest thing about it was really just being overseas, being international. That was my first time. Actually, I think going to New York. We went to New York, we went to Holland, we went to like Belgium and the UK, and I was just like, "Mwah, I'm snazzy."
You are snazzy. Was it during that gig that you realized you could really make a career for yourself in music, or did that like kind of happen at a later stage, or did it happen before that and you just kind of knew you were always going to do music?
Absolutely not. Um, I still don't know if I can make a living.
I oh yeah, I'm like I know that's a loaded question actually, cause same. Like
Every day is a faith walk.
yeah.
Um, I just grew up in a family that was very not show business, very
Mm,
not, we're not snazzy or creative or like even whimsical. Like our
mm.
family is just very practical. So the idea of making a living in any art for that matter was just sort of like, sure. Like I think I was just such a far cry from everyone else I had seen in my family. So, like I said, I think I just got up every day and put one foot in front of the other. Even when I had a record deal, I don't know, you're young and you're dumb. You're like, yeah, I'm about to own this town. You think you got it all dialed in, and then it's like, oh, life. So, like I said, it's a faith walk. I'm still like, can I stay with this?
Yeah. Oh, and we'll get to that later in this interview for
Well,
sure. But yeah, but I think you always kind of need to hold on to like an element of that almost like chosen naivete, I think.
absolutely. Mhm.
That's just like, yeah, well, why not me? I love to do it and like I think I'm a good hang. I think I'm good at
Yeah,
doing it. Like
yeah,
hopefully other people see that and hopefully I can continue to work, but it definitely is like a faith walk slash like sure, why not? Like, you know?
absolutely. They're like one of my favorite sayings, even to this day, in spite of all challenges, is they're gonna give the opportunity to someone. It might as well be me.
Mm-hmm.
The end. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of that simple. And I think
Yeah.
again, you're young and you're kind of naive, and all signs had already pointed towards you're good at this.
Yeah.
People keep routing you into doing this, so maybe you're supposed to do this.
Yeah.
And you want it. It's funny when your talent aligns with what you like.
Yeah.
I like singing. And so I just felt like, yeah, I really want to do this. So
Yeah. And I feel like it's so lucky to, find a career so early on in something that you really enjoy doing. It's like people search their whole lives to try and find something like that. And it's like a gift and a curse at the same time. Because it's like, why did it have to be in such a difficult industry though? Like, why
absolutely.
God? You know?
We'll have to get into that more later because sometimes I'm like, "Ooh, I wish I didn't love this."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess just like, let's give you some shine. Drop some names of people that you've worked with, things that you've done in your career.
Let's see. I've been so blessed. I work really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm comfortable with the success that's come, but I do feel really lucky, of course. I, at this point, have had a chance to work with Diana Ross. I don't know if you know who Kenny Lattimore is, and Shantae Moore, and
Hell yeah.
Ryan McKnight. These are my early artists
Yes.
I worked with and toured with, and Macy Gray. And I did promo for Justin Timberlake's first album. I worked with Britney Spears. I worked with Sheryl Crow. I work with the Roots. I work with actually Game of Thrones. They sent a touring expedition out into the world of all the music from the show, and I got to play the lead character, like Cersei and Daenerys, Mother of Dragons. I got to sing all these songs where I represented the show. That was amazing. I've worked with Barbara Streisand, Fleetwood Mac. I was with Cirque du Soleil for quite a few years. We did the Michael Jackson. They teamed up with the Michael Jackson estate, and we did that particular show, which was amazing. Who else? I mean, a ton of artists when you consider Grammys, house bands, Lionel Richie, Celine Dion. I've touched everyone at some point.
It's so amazing. It's so freaking cool. And it's like hearing you say all of those things. I'm like, what a badass. It's so incredible.
I'm grateful and I'm lucky. And again, I just work hard.
Yeah. Well, what is it that Oprah says when like preparation and opportunity meet, right?
Yeah.
You stay
Walk through
ready.
the door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe in bringing value to wherever
Mm,
I go. So
yeah. Well, moving closer to the monster in the room, what were you working on leading up to COVID?
that's a great question. And it has a multifaceted answer, but I'll say primarily, so when you've had a storied career like mine,
Hmm.
at a certain point, you're kind of like, you go into an art or a passion because you have a growth mindset.
Hmm.
So at a certain point, you kind of hit a professional cap. So for me, I was like, cool, like who tops Barbara Streisand? You know what I mean?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you start looking around like, okay, it's time to keep dreaming and keep like growing. So for me, a next logical step, it sounds so hilarious, but it's what I'm really interested in is taking music and songwriting and combining it with comedy and kind of branching into the world of acting and comedy and music. So prior to the pandemic, I was really taking a stand-up comedy class, which is hilarious in and of itself. And just kind of gearing up to start dipping my toes in those waters.
Yeah.
I was also kind of overcoming a health challenge. I had a really serious health challenge. So, really, the bulk of what I was doing was recovering from my
Mm,
health challenge and trying to get my life back together, physically and even emotionally. So,
yeah.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
lot of resetting and recalibrating. And then the pandemic hit.
Did it feel like initially the pandemic felt like a an opportunity to recalibrate? Like, oh, here's some like more space and time for me to work on, the comedy music project, or did it feel like, oh man, I was just like getting going and now it feels like the momentum has stalled?
It did not feel like an opportunity at all.
Okay.
No. It's funny, I think back now, I'm like, if I had just pushed I had a surgery, I had a spinal
Mhm.
surgery. If I just pushed my surgery back like 9 months, I could have literally spent the entire pandemic recovering when the whole world was underwater.
Like,
But
how dare you not know a pandemic was
how
coming?
dare me not like read the future? Um, as it turned out, I was literally just getting going again, refilling my coffers like professionally, financially,
Mm,
starting to even feel good physically, getting my energy back. It was quite an ordeal what I went through. So coming around the bend of 2020, I did a project for the Grammys. I had just put together a couple TV shows to do with like Ryan Tedder and One Republic, and I'm contracting the gigs and hiring the singers and organizing everything, and I'm just like, cool, like we're working, we're flowing. This year
she's
2020,
back.
yeah, she's feeling good, like she can get back in her jeans and she can stand, and 2020 is gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
And then it all went away. So I think the thing that was really difficult, especially for me, was I came into the pandemic kind of already vulnerable and
Mm,
compromised and at a place where I needed life to be full-fledged, like full speed ahead, and it was absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, like, what were your first thoughts when things started to shut down?
Well, like any one of us, who could have known
Yeah.
we were really facing? I mean, they're like 2 weeks, 6 weeks. And then like at a certain point in like I think May, I went to go visit my parents. Of course, we were like distanced, but we were in the house and we were talking and kind of discussing what was ahead. And we're like saying to each other, well, some people are saying it could be into the fall and maybe into next year. And it just didn't seem possible.
Mm,
Little did I know it would be another 2 years.
yeah.
So no one could have known what was ahead. And I think that's the craziest thing we've all learned about life is there's so little control. You have to really learn how to stay fluid and
Yeah.
and have acceptance and a big like modicum of detachment as well.
Mm, yeah, that's huge for sure. That's so hard to walk that line between being invested and being detached.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's really hard. Like, just I did an episode on miscarriage, and I talk about like fertility and stuff a lot in here. But I think like in that like kind of the season of life, like Matt and I talk about that a lot, and also professionally, especially when you're like a freelancer too. It's a similar approach. It's like having one foot in hope and one foot in reality and pragmatism, and being like, okay, like things could work
Don't
out.
go
Like,
together easily.
no, no, they feel very counterintuitive. It feels like you
Divergent.
have, yeah, like you have to kind of be fully committed to one or the other. And um, I know, like, we've talked about a lot of faith stuff. And I was saying to Matt the other day, too, that, like, I feel like I miss having that sort of belief that like I had when I was still like a practicing Christian, where it
Sure.
was like, it's done. God's handled it. I
Yeah,
fully 100%
it's
believe that,
very
like,
easy that way.
yeah, like the career that I want is going to happen. This job that I applied for is going to happen. Like the pregnancy that I want is going to happen. Like all these things, like it's already done. And then the other side of me is also like what that also feels, there's an element that feels entitled to that. Like you
Right.
deserve that more than other people. And
Right.
it's so, yeah, it just is, it's a hard place to sort of be in when everything just feels like it's up in the air.
Absolutely. And then you add to that, again, if you're the kind of person that pursues an art or a passion, you just feel like everything is so fated and purposeful, right?
Hmm.
Like, I was born to do this. And then
Yes.
it was such a humbling experience. I know for me, if we all paid attention, it was probably humbling for all of us. It was just a big giant lesson in it doesn't really matter what you're attached to. Life is it's going to happen. It's going to happen around you.
Hmm.
And how do you respond to it?
Yes.
How gracefully do you navigate it?
Totally. And I guess, like, to that point, how did you cope or like not cope with,
Yeah.
I would say it was probably what, like at least a year before like work started happening semi regularly. What did you do in that period of time?
I wish I could say that I was that person that found my zen and just blissed out and trusted the universe. That was not me
That's okay.
at all. Honestly, it was just such a rough period. I had a really bad breakup about like right in the middle of the pandemic, like
Of course, because why not?
9, because come on, life, of course. 9 months in, this guy just like completely just. And then I had some other extenuating circumstances with a piece of property where this other person I was just trying to help took advantage of me and squatted in a
Lord.
property that I was getting ready to give back to my landlord.
Hmm.
Person didn't have a right to be there and stayed for a year rent free, forcing me to go to court during the pandemic when I already was like financially compromised and I had to pay for attorney fee. It was just nightmare upon nightmare. So, how did I do? I didn't do I didn't do well at all.
Women's health is extremely important to me, and I think modern fertility is one of the most exciting, accessible new advancements to come out in recent years to help us really understand our bodies more. Whether you're ready to pop out a mini-me like yesterday, or the thought of being someone's parent after the night you had last night seems light years away, knowledge is power. Understanding how our bodies work to better be able to prepare for the future and take better care of ourselves right now is game-changing. Modern fertility doesn't just offer fertility testing. It also offers birth control, prenatal vitamins, ovulation and pregnancy tests, and just launched a sperm kit. Because fertility isn't just a woman's job, okay? So click the link in the show notes for $10 off your modern fertility hormone test and join the thousands of women who refuse to let fertility be a mystery. Now, back to the show.
I will say this, I feel like I've lived like a really brave life and put myself out there and taken chances. And through all of my experiences, I can say that I've never been a person that I don't feel like I've experienced a lot of anxiety. I get nervous, I feel challenged, but I don't think I'm an anxiety-ridden person. But following the pandemic, I know what anxiety is. I'm just like, oh, okay. Yeah, I have like ridden that edge where it's like I'm gonna topple over to the other side if I don't get a break here.
Yeah.
I struggled. I own a beautiful house here in LA, and half the time I was like, do I sell it? I was trying to figure out how to survive because the first year goes by, we're in the dead of winter, they're shutting things back down after we'd opened a little, and it's just looking so bleak, and the music industry was so far from reopening. And all I could think is, I don't know how to weather this storm. So what I did do was I got a job with Kanye West.
I didn't know this.
Oh, you didn't?
No. Because I was going to ask, I'm like, how did you get through this?
Honestly, it was, you do like all the programs you can do, like you freeze your mortgage and you're like getting your unemployment. And it was really, really like tooth and nail. Again, because I came into it compromised. But, I started looking around. I'm like, what do I do? I don't know if you know this, but like people were doing susus. You know what a susu is?
No.
Doesn't matter. It's just a bunch of ridiculous people pooling money together, and someone loses and someone wins, and it's a gamble, and don't ever do it. I didn't do it, but I almost got pulled into one. It was just like, you're just really trying to figure out how to survive. So I am with a friend on New Year's, and he's a really good old friend, and he is best friends with Kanye West. And I'm talking to him, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have a master's degree from NYU in something called music therapy. And he's like, tell me about it. And I'm like, oh, it's beautiful, it's noble, it's healing. And he's like, oh, Kanye could use that at his school. And I'm like, all right, great. Tell him. He calls him up. January 1st of 2021. Yes, January 1st of 2021. I'm sitting with Kanye West at his school eating chicken, and he's like, you're hired. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast.
I'm sure. I'm especially given like current events. I'm sure that's a whole other
podcast. Suffice it to say, I worked with him doing music there. So what I did was I went back into my tool belt. I do have a master's degree. I have a lot of education and a lot of experience. So I started working as a music therapist, and I worked at his school. I was working with his children and Courtney's children and all the kids, and it was insane. And then that imploded because Kanye West. Sure. The whole school kind of got dissolved. And then I actually just like on a whim applied for a job it's a neurological center for children with autism.
Okay.
And they have doctors and therapists. And anyway, I went there every day, full time, 40 hours a week plus, 8 in the morning to 5 or 6 in the evening. And I was doing music therapy. And I was just like, I just have to get through this period.
Did you enjoy doing it, or was it like, yeah, I have to get through it, or a combination of both?
To be honest, it was really difficult. It was really challenging. The biggest reason that it was challenging is because I was so emotionally in deficit. I was struggling so much. And then you show up to this place, and all day long you're pouring into someone else. You're giving. And this is good. I don't know if I should share this story. It's so freaking sad. But one day I was working, and I get a call from like my landlord at this place where this person was squatting, and there's just stuff happening. There's just complication and drama, and I'm in a session with a sweet little student, a little boy, and I'm just crying. And he turns to me and he's, bless his heart, he's autistic, and he's like, "But are you okay?" And it just touched me so much that he was able to dial in.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't want him to see me crying, but I was just beside myself. I was under so much pressure. So it was really difficult to show up every day and give when I had so little to give.
Yeah.
But I did it. And yeah, that job really helped me to stay focused in a way.
Man, yeah, it's funny. I feel like teaching or like music therapy, it does require so much of you, and sometimes you
Yes.
feel so I felt this way when working with kids too. Like I enjoyed it, but I also I was way more tired at the end of the day than I
Oh, it's
am working
exhausting.
with adult clients. And
Yeah.
but when you have those moments like that though, you're just like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
this
yes.
child is just like so tuned in, and
Yeah.
it like it helps refill the cup like temporarily, you know?
Oh no, I was touched and also just kind of shocked because
Yeah.
yeah, it was very sweet, and I must have been distraught because he could tell.
I mean, listen, it's so like, and fair enough. Like, that's so many things to be happening at the same
Oh,
time.
so
And like,
much.
I'm sure that you are not the only person who has cried at work in the last
Oh
2 years.
my, literally like
Yeah.
face down, like sobbing, like trying
Yeah.
to run a session, and it was
Yeah.
a lot. So I think there was just a lot of creative survival happening as a musician. I felt very betrayed by music.
Mm,
And it was funny, like I looked up midway and I was like, I'm really angry at music.
mm,
It's just an abusive lover. Like that's how I
mm.
felt.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting because I don't know if I should go on record as saying this. You might want to edit this, but all these like music organizations that should be reaching out to the community, and they did very little.
Really.
I got more support from the actors union,
Mm.
and
Like
it's
SAG-AFTRA.
absolutely
Hmm.
they were way more proactive in helping people, like here's a fund for you, here's like $1,000 just to get you through. I mean, it was interesting.
Yeah, part of me is almost like, isn't it just like the music industry to
Yeah,
do that?
really disappointed. And it's
Yeah.
like when you've really been a part of the community in a
Yeah.
very deep invested way for a long time, it shouldn't be like, hey, knock knock knock, hey, it's me. It's just it's really difficult.
Yeah. Were you entertaining switching careers altogether at any point?
I mean, I think I don't know about anybody else, but I would imagine that most of us sat down like, huh, like, what have I done with my life that it's this dire right now?
Yeah.
I questioned everything. I was just like, I'm educated, I'm sharp, like I
Hmm.
have options here. Why have I literally put myself in this position to be in such like dire straits? I definitely was like, what else could I do?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that for sure. I feel very lucky that teaching was so consistent for
You're
me.
so blessed.
Like so blessed, because I didn't expect that. Like the minute shit started to go down, I was like, "Oh, I'm fucked." Like this
Yeah.
is such a luxury for people. There's no way they're gonna want to pay what they're paying to like
You
keep
were
seeing
so
me.
consistent.
And somehow I think people kind of saw it as a therapy in a way, and a way to just completely do something not related to reality. Or if they were like clients who were actually artists, like it was something for them to like stay just
Centered on.
regular with, you know? But I feel like I had like my own professional COVID, like when my publishing deal ended, and it was a similar thing, just like sitting there being like, broker than I've, if that's a word, than I've ever been. Um, Things are not looking the way that I thought they would look, and like, what do I do now? How did I get into this position, right? Like, I have like
Yeah.
all these skills, and like, and I've had opportunity, and like, what am I doing? You know, and sometimes you just need a break to like recalibrate and just be like, okay, how do I move forward in a way that feels like safe for me, you know?
Absolutely. And again, I think if I hadn't had this very intense health challenge.
Mm.
Literally going into the pandemic, it would have been different. I think I could have been the person baking bread and
Hmm. Right.
playing my guitar. Like, sure, I think it could have been that. It still would have been horrible and scary and humbling and, full of questions. But I think for me, there was just this panic most
Yeah.
of the pandemic for me. And
Yeah.
it's really, it has infused me with a newfound urgency
Mm.
and commitment following the pandemic. So
Yeah.
that's the
And and probably gratitude too for like that
upper.
first gig back. I remember the first like BGB gig I did. I almost cried. I was like so happy to be like singing with other people in a room and just like, is this real? Are you real? You know?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I had a couple good little gigs in the midst of the pandemic. I was able to produce a tiny desk for NPR.
Cool.
Amazing. And, I basically hired the band and the singers and we threw together a show and it ended up being a wild success. So like there were moments of bright spot.
Mm.
But coming out of the pandemic, I just felt so fragile
Yeah. Yeah.
and just tender and like
Yeah.
you said, gratitude, but also just like, oh,
Yeah.
raise your voice. Like,
Yes.
but then my urgency to being on stage and to performance. And so to your point, I ended up touring with St. Vincent for the last year coming out of the pandemic. And what a joy. I mean, I've been telling people there's no other group of people, no other artist, no other music I would have rather been just like ensconced in than
Mm.
her and what we did and what we created. And it was the perfect way to transition out of that period because it was just such this creative, holding, safe space. And I feel so freaking lucky.
Right? That's like universe, God,
Yes.
ancestor squad looking out for you, and they're like, she deserves this.
Right? But like, bloop, like there's some balance. There's some like goodness being deposited back into my account because it was just so wonderful. Yeah.
Do you feel like your workflow is back to what it was pre-COVID?
I mean, not entirely, not
Hmm.
entirely, but I feel like literally in the last couple, maybe month or two, I'm like, it's about to be really good.
Okay,
I see that on the horizon. I've had
nice.
a couple of moments like, all right, like which way is it? Is it
Yeah.
this or is it this? It's one of these.
Yes.
Which way is the wind blowing? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, no, it's about to be really great.
Yes.
So yeah, like I'm feeling and seeing all these projects come in that are just amazing and
Awesome.
feeling like before, but also just more like I don't know, like it's almost like my relationships have deepened in a way,
Mm,
if that makes sense.
yeah, for sure.
People I've worked with, the networks I've built, it's like, no, you're with us. And so that's a good
Hmm.
feeling. Hardest part about the pandemic is being away from the community. You're like, oh God, not only do I have no money and I
Hmm.
don't know when I'm going to work again, but it's like, what have I built? Where's my
Mm,
community? Where are my people? Who am I? That was
mm.
hard.
I don't know about you, but I know that that community like shifted for me too. Like some people stayed, some people didn't,
Right.
kind of based on some things that were revealed in like pandemic behavior from some
Um,
people. And then just also being able to, I don't know how people like communicated during that time. I feel the same way. Yeah, some relationships like really truly deepened, and then the ones that weren't meant to kind of stick around haven't stuck around, and that's okay too.
so okay. Yeah. Because the quality of what's left is it's like informed and
Mm.
enriched and you're aware.
Yeah, I do feel like things feel more intentional, like
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
sure. I know I'm even making more intentional decisions about what I want to like be a part of, and that's a luxury too, right? To like to be able to that, so that's not lost on
It
me, but
is a luxury. You're right. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm also trying to think like, okay, even if I do need the money, is this something that I want to spend my time doing? Because I think just the concept of time became so like clear during
Absolutely.
COVID, you know?
Hmm.
Um, well, like, do you have any takeaway lessons, I guess, for anyone who is a freelancer or even just for yourself that you kind of got from this experience of surviving a pandemic as a freelancer or working singer? God forbid, hamsa, that there are any future pandemics, but like, have you thought about doing anything to like prepare for any extended period where you're not working?
That's a great question with probably a really boring answer, but
That's okay though, but I think like the boring stuff sometimes people don't like consider, especially I think like younger artists and stuff, like I when I was younger I was like whatever, like it'll all be fine, right?
yeah, it's gonna work out.
Like no one told me about, you can set up your own Roth IRA like without like having to have a corporate job or
Right. You're a
high
consultant.
yield savings or like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 401k. Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is gonna sound like the age-old wisdom of our elders. You know, I always tell people I went to college. It took me 6 years to get my undergrad for some reason, but I went to college for 6 years to get my undergrad degree in business, to become a substitute teacher, to become a singer. Like, I never ever assumed this is what I love, so this is what's going to happen. I was just like,
Mhm.
no. Even when I was young and I had a record deal and Diana Ross was taking
Yeah, right.
over, I was just like, no, let's just be ready for the storm. And so at 31, after touring the world with Britney Spears, I was like, I'm sick of music and I'm sick of LA. Moved to New York and got my master's when I met you.
Yeah.
And it's like I've just sort of always stayed prepared, whether it's developing skills, like, I'm learning Spanish, and you never know when you're going to need to be down in Mexico and hire a choir. But I mean, it's like the whole point of just having a growth mindset.
Mm.
You continue to add to your tool belt and your arsenal. And then, so boring, so basic, but always live below your means.
Mm.
I mean, if you're focused on having the Louis Vuitton purse, you're probably not going to make it during like the quieter seasons of your creative career. So
Mm.
it's just really about like stockpiling money and holding and just really being conservative. I basically live my entire life so that I can be available for music. And if I'm somewhere having to work a 40-hour-a-week job, maybe I can't do the gig that pops up on a Wednesday for a recording session with Coldplay or something. So
Hmm.
it's just I really try to like center myself on this is what I care about. This is what I want to happen. This is what I want my future to be. So I need to be set up for that. And for me, it's just driving a sensible car and buying a house and not paying rent in LA, things like
Hmm.
that. Just being really, really conservative. Yeah. Because I really care
Yeah.
about art and I want to be available to art. I don't want to sell someone else's product.
Mm.
I am a product, and so I want
Yeah.
to be able to put that forth. So,
I
oh,
love that too. 'Cause have you ever read that book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
I have read Elizabeth Gilbert, but I haven't read that book.
It's basically about what you're talking about, like always wooing your creativity and leaving space for
Yes.
the creative opportunities. And I think that's such a great way to, go about pursuing a career in any kind of like creative art, but that advice on being conservative too. I was stuck in that cycle of like, okay, get a gig, pay off my credit card, but I wasn't saving. So then I would get back into debt again. And I have other friends who have been in that loop as well. And it's like, once you can get a little more like, okay, like pay yourself first,
Yeah,
save,
absolutely.
prepare for the future, it's easier to kind of avoid some of that.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, such good advice though. I mean, you've given me so much good advice over the
Oh
years.
my
I mean, I
God.
literally would not have the career that I've like had without you. So facts.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, it's funny, like if I'd been more on top of my own advice, maybe I would have gone into the pandemic with more ease, but life sometimes just happens, and that's the whole point is even when you make the good choices, sometimes you're still like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
The fact that I'm still here and didn't have to get out of the business,
Mm.
even in spite of everything, it's probably a testament to how conservative I've been. So,
And also to like who you are and your skill
Yeah.
set and just like how you show up and that, people immediately thought of you when opportunities started becoming available again, so that just speaks to like the niche that you've carved out for yourself in the industry, I think.
Thank you, Lord. I mean, again, I don't take anything for granted, especially not anymore.
Right. Well, I love you so, so much. You know
Love you
that.
so much.
I'm so grateful for you just like sharing this. Like, I know it probably still feels very raw and like vulnerable coming out of this, and like there's still healing happening. I know, like on my side there is too, but I'm so glad that there are opportunities popping up and that like it's about to be, booked and busy season.
Hey,
Hey.
it feels that way, and I hope the same for you.
Thanks, girl. Yeah, we're gonna name it and claim it, call it in.
It is done.
It is done. It is done. That's a great way to end this episode. I love this woman so much. Stevvi's vulnerability, humor, resilience, and commitment to her passion for music are qualities I truly admire in her. If you want to keep up with Stevvi's musical adventures, you can do that over on Instagram at Stevvi Alexander, and that is StevviAlexander. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm over there at Danny Official. That's DAANI Official. And I also have finally joined the rest of the world and started a special TikTok just for the podcast. So that is at FTFE Pod, first time for everything pod. So coming out over there as well. I'll be making special content. And bear with me as I try and do things that are just like remotely as cool as whatever Gen Z is doing over there. If you wouldn't mind taking a second to subscribe, rate, and comment wherever you're listening to this episode, it really helps people find the show so we can grow our crew of first timers, and that would mean the world to me. First Time for Everything is produced by Two Sheilas Productions, and our theme song Closer is performed by me, written by me and the Royal Foundry, and produced by the Royal Foundry. Thank you guys so much for listening, and remember, it is never too late for your first time.